Nobody told you the World Cup started 3 times this year. Not one opening ceremony, not one moment, not one referee raising a whistle to his lips at one stadium while the world holds its breath. 3 ceremonies, 3 stages, 3 countries, 3 sets of music acts, 3 separate lighting rigs, 3 national narratives stitched together by FIFA into something it is calling, without any apparent irony, a trilogy. Mexico on June 11th, Canada on June 12th, the United States on June 12th. The 2026 FIFA World Cup did not begin. It launched, like a product, like a franchise, like a 3-part streaming series where each episode opens in a different city and closes on the same corporate logo. And I keep asking myself a question I cannot fully answer. At what point did the World Cup stop being a tournament and start being a content strategy? The football is already underway, for what it is worth. Mexico beat South Africa 2-0 at the Estadio Azteca in the first match of the expanded 48-team format. 3 red cards, 2 goals, Shakira on the pitch, and Molotov cocktails outside Gate 8. And then, less than 24 hours later, Canada faced Bosnia-Herzegovina in Toronto, while Alanis Morissette and Michael Bublé performed on the pitch at BMO Field. And simultaneously at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, Katy Perry headlined the 3rd ceremony before the United States played Paraguay, while Future and Anita and Lisa from Blackpink and Rema and Tyla were also on the bill, all in the same 24-hour window, all framed as one continuous global event. That is not a World Cup opening ceremony. That is a media franchise rollout. And the question of what that means, for football, for the fans, for the cities that paid for all of it, is what this video is about. Let me start with the money, because the money is the logic that explains everything else. FIFA expects to generate $13 billion in revenue across its 2023 to 2026 commercial cycle. $13 billion. The NDTV Sports Analysis published in May laid out the arithmetic. FIFA walked into this cycle with an $11 billion target. The expanded Club World Cup, flooded with Saudi investment, added roughly $2 billion on top of that. Some sports finance economists are now projecting the final number closer to $15 billion once the full ticketing revenue from 104 matches is counted. The previous cycle, the Qatar 2022 cycle, generated $7.6 billion. This cycle will be 72% higher, possibly more. Think about what a 72% increase in 4 years means for an organization that was already the most profitable governing body in sport. It means the 2026 World Cup is not a football tournament that generates money. It is a money generation mechanism that uses football as its delivery system. FIFA acknowledged that itself. In May 2025, FIFA's Congress in Vancouver approved a revised cycle budget reflecting the $13 billion projection. Infantino stood on stage and said, again without apparent irony, "It is history. It is the first. It will be a huge, huge success." He was not talking about the football. He was talking about the revenue. The 3-ceremony format is where that revenue logic becomes visible in the most literal way. FIFA's official press release described the 2026 World Cup as featuring a trilogy of opening ceremonies, the word trilogy appearing in their own materials, not in a critic's commentary. Each ceremony would take place 90 minutes before the first match in each host country. Each would have its own lineup, its own theme, its own national narrative. Mexico, Latin cultural heritage, papel picado, art, Shakira. Canada, multicultural identity, Alanis Morissette and Bublé, and Palestinian singer Eliana and francophone artist Vegedream. United States, a production titled A Shared Heartbeat, featuring Katy Perry, Future, Anita, Lisa from Blackpink, Rema, Tyla, one of the most commercially optimized entertainment lineups ever assembled for a football tournament. The formula is transparent. Each ceremony was designed to target the largest possible global audience segment, Latin America for Mexico, multicultural Europe and diaspora communities for Canada, American pop, hip-hop, K-pop, and Afrobeats for the U.S. ceremony. Every genre with a global commercial reach represented in a single 90-minute pre-match show at SoFi Stadium. This is market segmentation. Now, let me talk about how the audience actually responded, because the response to the Trilogy's first installment, Mexico, was not what FIFA's promotional materials suggested it would be. The Times of India covered the social media reaction to the Shakira and Burna Boy performance at the Azteca, and the headline they ran was, "Worst Opening Ceremony," not their characterization, a direct fan quote. One viewer wrote, "Worst Opening Ceremony, OMG, so shit NGL." Another, "It wasn't you, Shakira." A third asked whether Shakira was lip-syncing. Another, more measured, "Love Shakira, but the entire production for this World Cup opening is one of the worst of all time, relative to the previous ones and the year we are living in. This is the year of tech, AI, and you guys literally carried a flag on a helicopter over the stadium, which was done in 1970. In Super Week opening event and ceremony, the national news, whose critic reviewed the ceremony formally, ran a piece headlined, "World Cup 2026. Opening Ceremony Review. Shakira scores, but Mexico's ceremony falls short." The review identified the problem specifically. The extended Afrobeat section in the middle of the show sucked the energy out of the performance, leaving Shakira and Burna Boy haplessly filling the space with limp choreography. The conclusion? A fine sentiment, but it all felt a tad undercooked, and, even with Shakira's star power, the event will go down as a miss. 7 News Australia ran a similar piece. Mixed reviews in for Shakira and Super Week World Cup opening. The reviews were in before the final whistle of the opening match. That is not a small detail. FIFA spent 2 years and enormous resources building a 3-ceremony entertainment franchise around this tournament. It hired global stars. It produced custom official songs. It designed distinct national narratives. And the first installment, the first chapter of its own trilogy in the most iconic football stadium in the world, was described by critics and fans alike as undercooked, weak, and disconnected. And then there was Katy Perry, because the U.S. ceremony is the one that generated controversy before a single note was played. And that controversy tells you something specific about the cultural calculation FIFA is making. Perry was announced in May as the headline performer for the SoFi Stadium ceremony on June 12th. The response was immediate and largely negative. Times of India reported that angry fans were threatening to boycott the opening ceremony altogether. The criticism ranged from specific, Perry's recent cultural profile, her declining commercial relevance in the music market, questions about whether an artist primarily associated with American pop of the early 2010s was the right choice for the most globally watched entertainment moment of 2026, to broader. One commenter put it plainly, "I honestly think they could have picked someone better." Fox News ran a headline calling the announcement a moment of debate whether she's the right pick. ESPN reported it as a straightforward controversy. Fan backlash, FIFA defending the choice, the tournament not yet begun, and already explaining a PR decision. I find the Katy Perry choice genuinely interesting, not because of what it says about Perry, who is a fine performer and who will probably deliver a competent show, but because of what it says about FIFA's framework for making decisions. The organization is generating $13 billion in revenue. It has access to literally any performer on the planet. It has a U.S. ceremony that 6 billion people will see. And the name it put at the center of that ceremony generated immediate public backlash from the football fans it was supposed to celebrate. That is not bad luck. That is a decision made by a committee that was optimizing for something other than what football supporters actually want. What was it optimizing for? I think the answer is the same answer that explains everything about this World Cup's design. It was optimizing for broad commercial demographic reach, for sponsor-friendly recognition, for the kind of global name brand visibility that corporations pay to be associated with. Katy Perry is a known quantity in boardrooms in a way that a more current, more relevant, more football-connected artist might not be. And that is the calculus, not what football fans want, what the commercial infrastructure requires. This is where I want to step back and say something that might sound obvious, but I think is worth stating clearly. The expansion to 48 teams is the same logic applied to the sport itself. FIFA acknowledged, in its own internal documentation, quoted by the Economic Times and confirmed by DW and independent analysts, that the 48-team format would reduce absolute quality in the group stage. That's a direct quote from FIFA's own analysis. They knew the expansion would produce weaker matches. They expanded anyway. Because 104 matches generates more broadcast rights revenue than 64 matches. Because more national associations participating means more ticket revenue across more venues. Because a 38-day tournament spread across 16 cities means more sponsor activation, more hotel nights, more merchandise, more of every commercial metric that turns a football tournament into a quarterly financial report. Let me be more specific about what the 48-team expansion actually does to the football, because I think this is under-discussed relative to the political and financial controversies, and it matters to the argument about FIFA's priorities. The 32-team World Cup that ran from 1998 through 2022 had a specific quality that came from its constraints. 8 groups of 4, top 2 from each group advancing. Every group stage match meaningful, because 3 teams from each group of 4 would go home at the end. The tension in a 32-team group stage came from the fact that the margin for error was small. One bad result could end a nation's tournament, which meant almost no team ever played a meaningless match. In the 48-team format, there are 12 groups of 4. The top 2 from each group advance, plus 8 of the 12 third-place teams, which means roughly half of all third-place finishers also go through. Which means, and FIFA's own analysis confirmed this, that teams can effectively afford to lose one group stage match and still qualify. Which means the incentive to take risks, to play attacking football, to press for a result in a game you're drawing, is structurally reduced. The group stage becomes partly a matter of survival rather than competition. FIFA knew this. Their internal documentation, referenced by the Economic Times, acknowledged that the expansion would result in a tournament of lower absolute quality in the group stages. They presented it as a trade-off: less quality in exchange for greater inclusivity, more nations participating, more continents represented. Those are legitimate values, but they are values that also happen to produce 40 additional matches, each generating broadcast rights revenue and ticket revenue and commercial activation income for an organization on track to earn $13 billion this cycle. The inclusivity argument and the revenue argument point in exactly the same direction. That is not necessarily a coincidence. Mashable ran a piece previewing the 48-team format that said the expansion may have just ruined the World Cup. Their concern was specific: more group stage blowouts as overmatched sides faced elite competition, a knockout stage with teams that had no business being there, the reduction of group stage football to something closer to a preliminary warm-up for the matches that actually matter. Whether they are right will be determined over the next 5 weeks. But the concern was not abstract, it was structural, and it was validated by FIFA's own internal assessment. The 3 ceremonies are the entertainment wrapper around a tournament that has been deliberately engineered to be larger, longer, and more commercially productive than any World Cup that preceded it. They are not just a celebration, they are a statement of intent, a declaration that the organization running this tournament has decided the product is no longer purely sporting, that it is an entertainment franchise with a football core, and that the core, while still real, is surrounded by layers of commercial infrastructure that the tournament could not function without, and that the sport itself did not require. The prize fund tells the same story from a different angle. In December 2025, FIFA approved a $655 million prize fund for the 2026 World Cup, a 50% increase from Qatar 2022, where the fund was $440 million. The 2026 winners will earn $50 million. $50 million for winning the World Cup, at a tournament where the organization hosting it is on track to earn $13 billion from the same event. The players and teams receive roughly 5% of what FIFA generates. Let that math sit for a moment. I want to be precise here, because the $13 billion figure is the one that reframes every other controversy in this tournament. The ticket prices that are inaccessible to Mexican families, those are $13 billion logic. The dynamic pricing that tripled the cost of group stage seats between October 2025 and April 2026, that is $13 billion logic. The 3 opening ceremonies, that is $13 billion logic. The 48 teams, That is $13 billion logic. Every structural decision that has generated protest, investigation, and controversy in the months before this tournament starts from the same place. An organization that discovered the World Cup could be transformed from the world's largest sporting event into the world's most profitable entertainment franchise, and proceeded accordingly. The Y-Scores analysis from April put a specific number on the 2026 contribution, roughly $9 billion of the $13 billion total generated in this calendar year alone. $9 billion in 12 months. From one tournament, from one governing body. An organization that is exempt from taxation in most of its operating jurisdictions, that pays no taxes on its tournament revenues in the host countries under the terms of the hosting agreements, that generated a 72% revenue increase while simultaneously watching the tickets become unaffordable for the local population. The visa system failed accredited officials, and 2 state attorneys general in the United States opened formal investigations into its ticket pricing practices. DW published a piece on June 8th headlined, "So Much is Wrong with the 2026 World Cup," that laid out the full list, the expansion, the high ticket prices, the environmental impact of a tournament across 3 countries, the political complications. What ties all of those issues together is not any single bad decision, but a consistent underlying logic. Grow the format, grow the revenue, manage the consequences as they arise. The football is the product, the show is the packaging, and FIFA has decided the packaging needs to be 3 times larger than before. The 3 ceremonies will all be watched, the performances will be discussed, the football will start, and when it does, because this always happens, it will produce moments of genuine beauty and tension and heartbreak that no amount of corporate infrastructure can manufacture. Mbappe 4 goals from Ronaldo's all-time scoring record, Messi at 38, Erling Haaland at his first World Cup. These things are real, and they are not nothing. But here is what I keep returning to, and I want to be honest about the uncertainty in my own thinking here. I genuinely do not know when the transformation happens. I do not know the exact moment a World Cup stops being a football tournament and becomes something else. An entertainment franchise, a commercial operation, a media product that uses football as its most valuable piece of intellectual property. I don't know if that moment has already passed, or if it is still ahead of us. What I know is that in 2026, FIFA invented a trilogy, not a tournament with an opening match. A trilogy, 3 ceremonies, 3 stories, 3 commercial packages, a franchise opener and 3 acts before a single goal was scored. And the thing about a trilogy is that it implies a sequel. FIFA has already awarded the 2030 World Cup across 6 countries on 3 continents, and the 2034 World Cup to Saudi Arabia, which has announced a format even larger than 2026. The question I find myself sitting with is not whether FIFA can keep growing this thing. Obviously it can. The money is there, the television contracts are there, the sponsor appetite is there, the political relationships, Infantino and Trump, FIFA and Saudi Arabia, the governing body and every government that wants its name attached to the biggest show on earth, are all in place. The question is whether the thing that keeps growing is still, in any meaningful sense, a football tournament, or whether football has become, without anyone announcing it, the legacy IP of a global entertainment operation that happens to involve a ball. I don't think anyone at FIFA would answer that question honestly in public. But 3 opening ceremonies in 3 countries in 24 hours, followed by 104 matches in 38 days across 16 cities, generating $13 billion for one organization, with a prize fund that gives the actual competitors 5% of the total. That is the answer. Stated not in words, but in numbers. Whether that is what football was supposed to become is a question I will leave with you.